Now, Yamaha launched a bunch of new and updated motorcycles for the 2024 model year, but which ones should you think about buying, and are there any that you should avoid? Well, in this video, I headed to Motorcycle Live, the biggest and best motorcycle show in the UK, to take a look at all of them on the Yamaha stand. So here we go with each of the major categories of bike, and along the way, I'll tell you which ones are new, as well as which type of rider might want to consider each. Oh, and at the end, I'll give you my personal pick of the bunch. So let's start with the sports bikes, and of course the entry point here would be the smaller capacity machines with the R125 single and the R3 parallel twin. Now there's no major change here for 2024, but they're both definitely a great option if you want a learner-friendly bike that has a slice of that more desirable R1 image. Moving up from there, well, it is a big jump up to the Revy inline-4 peak power of the R6, although in the UK and Europe, I believe, owing to the fact that emissions regulations are almost constantly getting stricter, this bike is now only available as a track-only build. Now there are two versions, with the R6 race coming in at £13,000, or if you're feeling flush, there's a £19,300 R6 GYTR edition, which is basically Yamaha's racing division, and so this one is absolutely tricked out with fancy suspension and a Kropovich exhaust, along with some race bodywork to name but a few things. That means that if you're looking for a sports bike for the road in that sort of middleweight category, then your only choice in the Yamaha lineup is the much less punchy parallel twin-powered R7 that comes in at just under £9,000.
The thing I really like about this bike though is the fact that they haven't watered down the riding position. You see, a lot of the more affordable middleweight sports bikes are actually quite sat up, despite the fact that they've got clip-on style bars. This one though, look, the clip-ons are below the top yoke, and actually it does feel very sporty. So if you're wanting something that's like wallet friendly but does offer that track riding style position, it's fairly tall in the seat as well, then this is the one to look at over stuff like the Ninja 650 or the CBR 650R.
Topping out the sports bike range, we've got the brilliant R1 with its beautiful sounding cross-plane inline-4, although this 200 horsepower beauty will cost you more than double the R7 at £18,800. Now this bike also comes in a few different flavours, with the 60th anniversary paint job costing just another £500. Then there's the R1M, which is a big step up at £25,000, and while it is still road legal, it gets some top-end upgrades like the Öhlins electronic racing suspension system, some carbon bodywork, and top-notch tech. Or at the very top of the range, and I think this might be the most expensive Yamaha you can currently buy, there's a GYTR edition, much like the R6, which is track-only and gets a whole host of goodies, as well as the option to go even further with an extensive GYTR accessories catalogue. Now the naked lineup stacks up pretty similar to the sports bikes, starting with the MT125 single and MT03 twin that are pretty much the equivalent of their sports bike counterparts. In the middleweight category, we've got the MT07 at £7,500, and this has been a great seller over the years owing to its accessibility, but also a lively engine that keeps it entertaining even if you are a bit more experienced. This one got a bit of an update last year with a new TFT display and slightly revised styling, so no changes for 2024. But where Yamaha have really focused their efforts in the naked category is with their inline triple-powered MT09.
You know what? The MT09 was already my favourite, good value for money naked bike that offers a lot of thrills, so they didn't really need to change a great deal. But one thing that is a big step up is this new TFT display and the switchgear. I mean, this is what you're looking at when you're riding the bike most of the time, so how the rest of it looks is maybe less important than this view, and it's a much better display, much bigger, feels punchier and clearer to me, and so yeah, a big tick in my book.
On top of that, it got revised suspension settings, a Brembo radial master cylinder for the front brake, tweaks to the riding position and foot controls, cruise control is now standard, and some interesting new acoustic amplifier grills which are built into the top of the tank to enhance the induction sound, which they say gives it a more visceral riding experience. All of these tweaks and changes also trickle up to the Upspec SP version, which costs another £1,300.
Now, you know the drill with the SP versions. You've got better brakes, those are Brembo Stylemas, I believe. You've got fully adjustable suspension, so the fork is KYB, gold anodized as well, which does enhance the look a little. There's an Öhlins shock at the rear, and you've got a remote preload adjuster there so that you can make quick changes. And then lastly, this rather nice black, blue and silver paint job, which references their super premium top of the range sports bike, the R1M.
Now topping off the naked lineup, we've got the MT10 and MT10 SP, which were updated last year and got some similar features like the acoustic amplifier grills. Now undoubtedly, the awesome sound of the R1 engine in a naked bike is a heck of a combo, but having ridden it back to back with last year's MT09, at least on the road, I've got to say, I prefer the slightly lighter and more nimble and compact middleweight triple. So yes, I'm very excited about this new MT09 and I can't wait to get hold of one for review. Now before we get onto the next few bikes, I'd just like to say a huge thanks to today's video sponsor, and that's Cardo. Many of these new bikes feature the latest and greatest in terms of connectivity, and that means phone calls, messages, music and podcasts are all available through their dash and switch gear if you hook up your phone over Bluetooth along with a headset. Now in my experience, Cardo make the best headsets on the market, and we specifically use their top of the range flagship product, the PackTalk Edge. The biggest reason to buy one of these for me is the DMC system, or dynamic mesh communications, which means that you can pair up to 15 riders in a group with up to a mile between each, and the more riders that join, the stronger the connection becomes. On top of that, it's self-healing, so if one of your buddies drops off the group, there's no need to pull over and pair again, as they'll just be added back in seamlessly. Then you've got the top-notch audio quality courtesy of the JBL design speakers and perfect noise gating on the microphone that means that you don't get any distracting, unwanted wind noise from other riders in your group. Genuinely, this is the headset I'd use even without their sponsorship, and I absolutely love using it when I'm out on a group ride, so do check out the link down in the description below to pick up yours, and you'll also find down there a discount code specifically for my viewers. So once again, a massive thanks to Cardo for their support, and with that, let's move on to the retros. Hopefully you're starting to get a bit of an idea now of how the Yamaha lineups work. And so with the retros, you've got the XSR 125 as the entry point at £4,800. In my opinion, this is one of the most desirable little 125 bikes on the market, especially in the slightly more premium Legacy version, which gets spoked gold rims and a bit of a fancier paint job. Moving up the range, we've got the retro equivalent of the MT07 in the form of the XSR 700, and this one also gets a Legacy edition with a beautiful brush tank with speed block graphics, a bit of gold paint on the rims, and also some scramblery looking touches like the high and wide bars, headlight guard, and flat track styled tires. If, however, you fancy something properly quick, then I think you might be happier with the XSR 900, which gets the same inline triple as the MT09 that I love so much. Again, this one was updated pretty recently, so there's no big change for 2024, but they have introduced what I would say is possibly one of the best looking new bikes on the market in the form of a half-faired version.
Now, if you watched our EICMA coverage, you'll know just how much I really love this GP version of the XSR 900. It's the paint job, I think. It references those Marlboro bikes of yesteryear, and it's just bold, you know. It's nice to see a manufacturer take a punt on something so brilliant looking. Then you've got the racer kit as well, which gets you the fairing lowers. I don't believe they've got it on the stand here, but we did see that at EICMA, and it really finishes it off nicely. But it's not just all aesthetics. I mean, if you compare it to the regular XSR 900, there are a couple of tweaks that just give it a lift. That dash I mentioned, for example, that's new on the MT09, you actually get it on this bike as well. And so yeah, this is pretty much top of my list of bikes that I want to test ride in 2024.
Next up, we've got the Torus, starting with the Tracer 7, which is a taller interpretation of the MT07 platform, along with a lot more wind protection and some decent luggage options. In fact, the standard bike comes in at just under £9,000, whereas the GT version that gets the side cases bundled in, as well as the bigger windscreen and more comfortable seat, comes in at £9,710. So certainly one to look at if you're considering going further afield, but you don't want a bike that's too big and cumbersome. That said, if you're going two up and with luggage, then it might well be worth considering the extra grunt of the Tracer 9, which gets about 50 more horsepower owing to the inline triple that we've referenced a few times already in this video. This one comes in a base model at around £11,000, or again, a GT edition that comes in at £13,210 with some extra distance focus goodies.
Now this bad boy is the top of the lineup, so it's the GT Plus model, and you get loads of nice enhancements. You get this really nice grey paint job with the silver stripes, which do look quite classy. But the big one is the radar at the front, and that opens up all sorts of features like active cruise control. But the impressive thing is that this system actually ties into pretty much the whole bike. So if the radar detects you getting a little bit too close to the car in front, firstly it'll try a little bit of engine braking to slow you down, and if that's not enough, it can actually use the link braking system to slow you up even quicker. Whilst it's doing that as well, it firms up the fork using the electronically adjustable suspension to prevent too much brake dive, and so it really is one of the most advanced active cruise control systems on the market. Super impressive, loved riding it out on the press launch, and a great choice if you're looking for a road-focused tourer that has the works technologically.
Now at the same launch event, I was also lucky enough to ride the Nikon GT, which as you can imagine is a really unusual experience owing to the twin front wheels. On the one hand, the stability is incredibly reassuring, and there's also absolutely bags of front end grip, and unlike some other three-wheelers, it does lean somewhat like a regular motorcycle. But on the other, the extra weight that front end brings saps a bit of acceleration, it doesn't feel quite as nimble as the Tracer, and then there's also the extra expense on top. So while there might be some specific use cases where this makes a lot of sense, for the majority of riders, I just recommend checking out the Tracer 9, which is absolutely fantastic. Moving over to the adventure bikes now, and there's an absolute plethora of choice in terms of the Tenere 700 lineup, with 6 different flavors and variations that sort of get increasingly off-road focused. The standard Tenere 700 comes in at just under £10,000, but for an extra £800, you can now get the Extreme Edition, which gets longer travel suspension for tackling trickier trails. There's also a Rally Edition at £11,400, which gets the Speed Block paint job, which looks rather good, along with an accessory exhaust and more protection underneath to keep the engine and headers safe from rocks. Now around 12 grand will get you the World Raid Edition, which gets that longer travel suspension of the Extreme, along with a bigger 23-litre fuel tank with twin fillers, and that makes it ideal for longer stints between stops, perhaps if you're riding in more remote locations. Then the absolute range topper is the World Rally, which basically gets absolutely everything you can imagine, including the fancy Akropovich exhaust upgrade. But like I say, the longer the suspension gets, along with the rally-style bench seats, generally the taller the seat height gets, and so this specific bike comes in at 890mm, which might be well out of reach for a lot of riders. But fear not if you're a little bit on the short side, because Yamaha for 2024 have a solution.
Now, if you watched my video of the Ducati stand earlier, you'll see that I'm not that tall. 5'9"-ish, about 175 centimeters. And so if I sit on a tall bike like their new rally version of the Desert X, I can't even reach the floor. Similar story with some of the bigger Tenere 700 specs as well. And so this new Explore version, which you'll see written in its dedicated graphics there down on the side, is actually quite appealing because it's a little bit lower. They've dropped the suspension, there's a touch less travel, and that means the seat height is a little more accessible for moderately vertically challenged riders like myself. The idea being it's a bit more road focused, touring friendly, it's got a touring windscreen as well, and so if you like the Tenere 700 but you're not really thinking of off-roading that much, then this is probably the one to go for.
So it has to be said, some nice new options from Yamaha, but for me, the pick of the bunch simply has to be the new XSR 900 GP. I absolutely love a retro-styled bike, and I think this has to be about as good as it gets in terms of the looks. And also, if the regular XSR 900 is anything to go by, it should be a brilliant ride as well.
As always though, I'd love to know which would be your pick, so do let me know down in the description below. Also, we've got a playlist of all of our content from Motorcycle Live here on the screen, so give it a click and you can watch roundups of all the new bikes from the major manufacturers that have got a stand here. Hit subscribe as well if you've not already, if you want to see more motorcycle videos like this. Many thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next one.